What influence does your environment have when you are writing or developing projects for classes?
I think that I a lot of times have some kind of brain space that I like to use when I am working. So, for example, I can't work in my room because for some reason my brain just says this is not a place to work. So usually I alternate between the Knoll studio, sometimes the library, and I also like cafes a lot because I do like some of the buzz behind it. So I think that it's a balance between having other things to maybe distract me enough to be able to feel like there's stuff going on. And then still being able to focus with having my own space because I'm a spreader. So like tables like this are good because I like to have everything out and be grabbing things from all over the place.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, question number 2. When you are doing homework or projects for class, do you find that certain places, objects, or even physical movements help you think or come up with good ideas?
I think that probably goes back to the spreading idea again, because I think that the table is really important for me. Where I'm sitting and how close I am to the table, that's really important. So I don't like fixed benches because then I can't like pull my stuff closer. And like I said about being a spreader, that usually helps me come up with ideas because I can grab from a lot of different areas. So I don't know that other things would actually influence me to have good ideas. It's just being able to set up an environment that I can just kind of let my brain go to the different areas, either on the table or something like that. So.
Okay, great. The third question is, let's call the behavior you listed above play, since we normally don't associate it with academic writing and thinking. Now, how does the Knoll studio space, for example, the design, layout, and colors, facilitate play when you write or design projects for class?
I think that probably, again, goes back to the having enough to distract me, like occupy that little part of my brain that wants to be distracted as far as the color goes, because there is a lot going on in here. And so then when I need kind of like a break and just kind of look around, I oftentimes look up at the skylights, or I'll get distracted by the fans and like look at them for a couple minutes. But I think that helps to be able to have a sense that I can always take a break if I'm like really into something. And then the other thing with the Knoll studio is I do like the actual space of it, that I'm able to work at the green tables, I'm able to work at different tables. I like the fact that I can move the chairs. That's really important because I do like to get up close to what I'm working on. So I think that the combined idea of having something to give me a break in that sense, like a mental break, really helps with my work. But I do also like the fact that it's changeable enough to keep me on my toes in that sense. So usually that's what I like about working in the studio.
Could you discuss how available technologies like touchscreen monitors, the furniture, and dry erase boards facilitate and encourage play in the composition process?
Okay, this is something I can dig my teeth into. I actually use all 3 of those regularly at the studio. So the touchscreens I don't use for their actual touchscreen ability more than the fact that they're the biggest screens that we have in the studio. And I've used those before for 2 different poster projects, which was a huge help for me as I was experimenting with what I wanted to do with it, because one of the posters I was working on was supposed to look like a web page, and I wanted to see how big things would be, and the size of the touchscreens we have here are about the size of a poster, so it was perfect to be able to see what the size would actually be, and I did get to mess around with some of the different layouts and that kind of thing. So the touchscreens I love to use for more visual projects, or if I'm working on a Prezi or something, I think it's more helpful to see how close it would be actually in relation to the real size. So that's how I use those. The furniture, for my specific major, I'm actually a sign language interpreting major, and so sometimes I will do videos here in the studio, and one of the things we have are these movable screens, and I'm supposed to have a solid background for all of my videos, and so I use those all the time. I'll move the screens around, and sometimes you'll see me in my little bubble of like blue background, and I'm able to use those. So that's something that I think is really small, that's kind of important on my end of it when I am trying to do a project of my own. So those are one of the furniture things. And then also when we're talking about the tables, when we do move them around every couple months, and I think that allows me to keep coming back to the studio, because I know for myself I can't stay in one place for too long. And so it's still the same place, but it looks different, which it lets me come back and not be like too comfortable with it to be able to get distracted. And the whiteboards I really like. So I've used the whiteboards, especially the copy cam, because I like to be able to save things. But I'm also a very tactile person. I don't like brainstorming on a computer necessarily. It's too frozen for me, so I like either using physical paper or the whiteboards. And I'm not a huge color coder, I just like color, so that works out. But with the copy cam, I've done brainstorming for posters, brainstorming for workshops that I think would be a great idea. And because I am such a spreader, it also comes out there too, that I have ideas here and there and everywhere, and I'm kind of connecting them, and then I'm able to see everything that I've done on a sheet of paper, so all of that kind of works together when I'm coming up with various things. So, yeah.
Great. So, this is the 5th question. As you know, the Knoll Studio has movable tables and chairs, and also has a variety of spaces, such as breakout rooms, the greenhouse, and the invention space. How do you think these resources and spaces, together and independently, encourage you to play as you're working on projects?
Okay. I think that, at least for me, the breakout rooms kind of scare me because they're a little bit smaller, and I don't know, I feel like I'm echoing and I have to be quiet. So for me, that's not as much of an invention space, really. And it's something that I would use if I have something prepared already, like a project that a lot of times I have to do speaking as an interpretation for some of my homework. And so that I feel more comfortable in an enclosed space, but it's not as much of an inventive space for me. So I like the greenhouse, one, because we have the natural light that comes in, and like we talked about, the movable tables, that it is something new that you're able to come into and not be entirely familiar with, even though it's still a comfortable space. But one of the things I noticed during the day when I'm here, either when I'm just hanging out or working here or different things like that, is I like the fact that there are people around, because sometimes I'm able to throw in an idea about brainstorming or something if there are people near, but I also will grab some of my friends who are here a lot, and that's really helpful to be able to include in whatever I'm coming up with, so I really like that. And then, again, just the natural light, I think that's a really big thing. It makes me feel less enclosed throughout the day, and it's fun to be in here when it's raining or something like that. It's just, it adds a different flair than any of the other spaces around campus do, because a lot of them don't have windows, and certainly not skylights. So that's just something that I think of a lot, actually. So
yeah, great. Thanks.